Surprisingly, Steely Dan was one of the most mentioned artists when I ran a survey to know which bands I should analyze next for my chord analysis videos. So let's get ready to learn a lot of juicy, jazzy chords as we will analyze the songs on the album Asia from Steely Dan. So in so many songs on this album, we get a lot of alterations, especially sharp nines, and a lot of quartal voicings. So let's explain all of that. So first of all, in the first song, Black Cow, it starts like this. So it's really typical of modal jazz. We get a dominant 9, a C dominant 9. And we take the top of the chord and we slide it 2 frets higher and back to it. Super typical, and this kind of voicing has a lot of variations to it. We can play a 6-9 chord by adding the 2nd fret on the 3rd string, or we can play it as a full bar, as we will see later, right? So after the we get. So now we get a lot of alterations with sharp 9s. We get this A dominant 7 with a sharp 5 and a sharp 9. So to play that, I need to bar my pinky on the 6th fret so that I can play everything. And then it has a nice resolution to this chord. So quartal harmony is when you play a lot of 4th intervals one after another in the chord. So we get that here. We get D, and then G, and then C, D, D, D. And then we stop the quartal harmony to have the rest of the chord. So if we played only 4ths, it would sound like this. But what they do is a full bar here, which is more of a typical chord. So if we want to label that, we could say it's a D add 9 add 11 with no 3rd. That's quite a lot. So I would kind of consider that a C chord. Maybe a C6 with a bass of D, right? So a C6 with a bass of D is much better than D add 9 add 11 no 3rd. It's like a mouthful, right? And they use it a lot in a lot of different places, right? In the song. So if you really want to play modal jazz, you can play a kind of chord like this and move it around. And they also use the Jimi Hendrix voicing. It comes back very, very often on that album, right? So that's an E dominant 7 with a sharp 9. Like on the song Purple Haze, right? So it happens a lot in that song also. So a lot of cool stuff here. Then on the title track Asia, we get a typical Steely Dan voicing, the mu major chord. I don't know the origin of why it's called mu major. Maybe it's an acronym to say major up, like MU, because we add a major 2nd in the chord. It sounds like this. It's a very stretchy voicing. I prefer to play it like this personally. It's exactly the same thing, but we play the bass note with the pinky on the 6th string instead. And one of the benefits of playing it like this is that we can bar the index and play the 13th on top. Right? So we kind of drone that at the beginning of the song. Right? So the mu major chord is most often played on keyboards because you play the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, and you add the 2nd in it, which creates a kind of a cluster, which sounds really, really good. And on guitar, it's quite hard to play the 1, 2, 3, 5 in order in the same octave. So we have to spread some of the notes. That's why we come up with a voicing like this, right? So it's kind of an add 9 chord if you think about it, right? So that's the mu major chord that we hear at the beginning of the song. And then in the chorus, I love it. We have these chords right here. I run to you First time I heard that, I was like, I need to find what this is, right? So we have an F major 7, and I wrap my thumb around to have the bass note. I run, and then we have a G6 line. And then we take that same thing, but from the 5th string, right? So if we play this, that's a G6 line, but if I play the bass note on the 5th string instead, it is still, you still have the 6 and the 9 in the chord, right? So it's nice to play. And we hear that a lot in bossa nova, for example. Those 6/9s voicings. So you get the G6 9. And then you get it from D flat. But the cool thing is that we add the sharp 11 on top by barring on the 3rd fret. And then we put it 1 fret lower. So that's super colorful, right? I run to you. Super nice. Then another concept that they use a lot is to take a regular triad but to add another bass note under it, right? So later in the song, when you have like the sax solo, we play that chord, right? So it's kind of the mu major chord, but the 2nd or the added 9th is on the bass instead. So we get a major triad. It's super basic, but we're going to add the 2nd, which is B, but on bass. So it creates a very colorful jazz chord. It has a jazzy, unstable sound, if you will. Right, I think they shift it in that part, right? So they stay on that chord a lot of time. So that's another concept. If you want to create jazz chords, but you don't know too much about extensions, you can just take a regular triad and play a different bass note at the bottom that's not in the chord, and that's what it's going to give you, right? So that's like a tip to sound jazz, even if you don't know a lot about jazz. Then in the song Deacon Blues, we have a major 13 voicing. So we play a C major 7. And then we play this one. And then down and down again. A lot of times the same voicings. They love to shift around the major 7s or the major 13th or the major 11th chords, right? So the typical voicing is like this, right? So you have the root, the major 7th, the major 3rd, and the 5th, the perfect 5th. And then we play from B flat. So it's the root, the major 7th, the major 3rd, but instead of playing the 5th, we use the 13th. Most often when we use the 13th like this, we see it with a dominant chord like this. But now we play it as a major 7th, which adds more of a dissonance to it, especially because we shift it around. So it's kind of an interesting chord, an interesting sound here. Before we continue with the lesson, I want you to get my chord dictionary guide, which is for free. You can get it, first link in the description box. I compiled all of the one-off guides that I use to offer in my lessons into the same resource, so you can learn beautiful add 9 and add 11 voicings and cluster chords and way more. I packed a lot into that guide, so you can download my chord dictionary by clicking on the first link below, and it's free, so why not go take it. Then in the song Peg, we have another nice voicing, which is a major 9 chord. It goes like this. It's not a mu major chord because it's not 1 2 3 5, it's 1 3 7 9. And then they alternate with the sharp 9 chord, the Hendrix voicing, so it goes like this. Something like this at the end, right? So they play the same sequence 3 times, right? So the G major 9, then the G flat dominant with the sharp 9, and then we do it from F and E flat and D, and then we play a C major 7, and then a... That chord, I guess, it could be considered a G add 9 on a bass of B, right? But it's not really important, the label right here. I think it's really, really nice, this one. And then on the song Josie, which is the last one on the album, I really, really love that little sequence right here. It goes like this. Oh, so colorful, so jazzy. So the principle here is that we use a chromatic bass line. F, G flat, G, A flat, do, 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 do. But then we use lots of modal chords on top, right? So it's the same principle here. We play a C chord. The principle of using a triad with a different bass note under it. So when I play this, it's a C triad, like a C major chord. But I'm going to play an F at the bottom. Right? So I play the fourth at the bottom. And then this is kind of using a D6 9, but instead I'm gonna play a G flat at the bottom instead of the D. At least to me, that's how I heard it in the song. The chord passes by really fast. Then I use a D triad on top with a G at the bottom, right? So it's the same principle of using the fourth of the chord at the bottom. And then this one. Wow. So this one is an A flat major 13. So that's such a nice sequence right here. I love it. And then later in the song we have like... Right? So it's just a nice voicing, this one. It's an E minor 7. And then they use more chords that are regular triad with a different bass, right? So this goes like... So the principle here is that I have a D triad, but I play, instead of D at the bottom, I play once again the fourth, which is G, and I shift it around. So they do something like that in the song, so it's super interesting. We learned about chordal chords and sharp nines and mu major chords and using a different bass note under a regular triad. So much good stuff in this lesson. If you want more, you can click on this video for another top 10 chord series. This one is about Radiohead. I'm sure you would love it. Of course, I show more than 10 chords in these videos, but I analyze an album to show the best chord shapes. So go over to that video next, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time, au revoir.